Thank you, Jens, and thank you for having me here. So my name is Vegard Jorgensen. I'm based in Norway. I work at a company called Norwegian Healthcare Network, and we deliver services to the entire healthcare sector here in Norway, to every hospital, to every primary physician, and everyone who works in healthcare. And my role here in NHN is I'm the product owner, platform owner of our private cloud, which is based on VMware VCF with Tanzu. I think you can just click to the next slide. Yeah, so a little bit more about ourselves. We are government owned. We have infrastructure in several regions here in Norway. And our mission is both to deliver services, but we also actually host a physical network. So we maintain our own physical network, actually called Healthcare Network. So, and the reason is we are able to actually deliver services to every hospital in Norway, even if public service provider is down, even if internet is down or unstable, we can still deliver. And I've just provided the little map here in the right corner showing where we are. And we're talking about sovereign cloud, and we're talking about guarantee where our data is. And one of the reasons why this is so important for us is actually, if you look at the map, we do have a neighbor in the east, which has shown quite a lot of aggressiveness last year. So we need to actually make sure where are our data. Can we guarantee that it's in Norway? And if we need to, can we move everything outside? So that's a little bit about us. And I live in northern Norway, as you can see from the top right picture. I took that last week. I went skiing on top of a mountain near where I live. So we still have very, very good skiing conditions up here.
That is actually when we were talking last week and prepped that call. That is the picture he sent me, like, yeah, you know what, I don't have much time, I'm here right now. And guess what, I was so jealous about that. With that, I put it over to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you. So Jens just sent me a picture of him being skiing in the Alps, but it was also some after skiing involved from the pictures I could see. So why did we choose to go to a private cloud? Why didn't we just utilize Microsoft Azure, which has 2 regions here in Norway? And the first part I already talked about, we need to guarantee that we can deliver critical service, because some of the services we deliver are critical in order to run a hospital in Norway. So we need to deliver those services no matter what. And it's important for us when we talk about data sovereignty, and sovereign cloud is actually important for us. We need to actually be able to guarantee for our customers that their data always is in our data centers here in Norway. The next thing is we needed a new way of working. We have a lot of internal developers. We have more than 200 developers developing, and they were all eager to work in a new way. This was about 3 years ago. Our old platform, also based on VMware, couldn't keep up with the expectations from the developers. So we started looking into Tanzu. We started looking into different pipelines. We landed on the GitHub's way of working, with Tanzu being the engine running everything. We needed improved security. We needed improved cost management. This is things we can get from VCF with Tanzu and some other tools. And we have the lower requirements concerning GDPR, which everybody, I think, knows. Yeah, so that's just the intro. If you could just skip to the next slide. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to just shout out.
I would have one question for you, Vegard, and that is, you just mentioned, private cloud versus, let's say, public cloud. What were like the main criteria why you decided that the public cloud is maybe not the right cloud for you, especially because you also mentioned improved security? And what we hear from some of our customers is that they feel that the public cloud providers would even add something to that security, would even have a better security concept than what they can realize in-house. So how do you see that?
Yeah, so back in 2020, we did an assessment, and yes, you may have some improved security in public cloud, but we needed a sovereign cloud. We needed to actually be able to guarantee 100% sure data is always in Norway. And when we talked to Microsoft, they couldn't give us that assurance. They tried to say it at first, but when you started to dig into the data agreement, data processing agreement, we see that they cannot give that guarantee. We are talking about critical data, so that's why we landed on, okay, we'll build a private cloud. And when it comes to improved security, we do have improved security when we compare to the traditional virtualization environment. So that's the reason. We're still using public cloud, but not for our critical data. But we are utilizing advanced functions within Azure, like AI and ML. This is not something we are going to build on premise, but we need to control our data.
So a bit like a private cloud on steroids, like using, let's say, public cloud services whenever it makes sense, but not relying on a public cloud services totally.
That's actually, so whenever we get a request to host a new system, we will actually look into that system. Okay, what kind of data, what kind of technology, what kind of architecture are we talking about here? And then we'll decide, should it run on our private cloud or should it run on the public cloud? Because if you can use the public cloud for easier workloads, no problem, let's use it. Because we have enough workload on-prem as it is. So yeah, so that's why.
Thank you.
So Vegard, a quick question. This is JT Perry, and we can delay it later if it makes more sense. Yeah. What outcomes were you hoping to pursue by moving to Kubernetes and GitOps, right? I think we all know the magic buzzwords around that, but what was Norwegian HealthNet looking for out of that?
Yeah, we were looking for faster deployments, a different software architecture when it comes to microservices, and the entire pipeline, because in the old, I'm talking the old world, this is 3 years ago, but we had more traditional development. You are developing for maybe a month at a time, and then you have a release and you deploy it, you throw it over the DevOps wall, and you hope it will work. And the biggest outcome for us is we needed to allow developers to push their code to production as often as they like. Today, if we don't have any developers pushing code multiple times a day, but if they want to, they can. So the pipeline, the platform is not the limitation. It's their own development speed. That's the limitation. So that was the outcome we were hoping to. Faster deployments, and everything else like canary updates, fail fast and everything. That was the main driver. And we needed a container orchestration platform. And we had a few Rancher clusters, and someone will look into OpenShift, but we're not there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So we actually, back in 2020, we did a proof of concept because we had a lot of requirements and we were a large existing customer with VMware. So we just made a list of requirements and we did a POC, and we saw that, okay, VCF with Tanzu matched our requirements. And I have to say, it took us quite a while to actually understand the different versions of TKG. Because you have TKGS, TKGM, TKGI, TKG as a service, and I think that's at least one other. So it took us some time, but when we did some digging into Tanzu, we saw that actually this is Kubernetes. It's not something we were actually afraid that this is okay. Now you have VMware taking open source and you just wrapping something around, and we are talking VMware, not Kubernetes. But if you look deep into Tanzu, you see that this is native Kubernetes, and it was actually very important for us because everything we now build, you can actually move from our on-prem platform to another Kubernetes engine, like AKS or Google or something. So that was very positive for us. And in the same process, we were moving from F5 Big IP as a load balancer, AVI networks, NSX ALB, which is the brand now, looked very promising because it's API driven, and we actually went all in on the NSX advanced load balancer. And we did all this in cooperation with VMware. We had several meetings with architects and others, both here in Norway and in the entire EMEA region. So we ended up with 2 regions here in Norway that can operate separately from each other, and we have multiple availability zones within each region. And then we saw something, coming back to this, that this is a lot happening within the cloud native computing foundation. The cloud native world is there's a lot of good tools there. So we actually started putting a lot of open source software on top of Tanzu. And this is new for us because the traditional approach to open source has been no open source. You only need large vendors and software that we have good licensing models and so on, but there are quite a few very good open source solutions that fits very good into Tanzu. So I'll come back to that. Okay, so next slide, Jens.
Yep, just one question before we move on. You were talking about a strong cooperation with VMware and specifically, you know, the help which was provided, let's say, from an engineering perspective. If you look forward now, right, where you are right now, and when you're looking forward at that, well, partnership with VMware, what are you expecting from a partner like us or from a vendor like us? Like, where would you say, you know, the support and the understanding and knowledge is most needed for you?
So I think we need to still be have a strong partnership with you, because we need to understand what's in the roadmap with VMware. And in some cases, we actually have been able to give some feedback and some we have suggested some improvements to, for example, AVI. I think one of the suggestions from us actually is now a part of AVI or Advanced Load Balancer. So we need this feedback. We need this kind of talks with you quite often. Earlier today, we did have a call with someone in the US regarding Tanzu mission control, but the TMC local, which is probably releasing June, July this year. And we are interested in being a quite early adopter in order to evaluate this product. So we need someone that understands us, understands the healthcare business, and someone who can advise us. You may want to look into this or into this or into that. So that's why we're having weekly chats with the national team here in Norway from VMware.
Thank you for clarifying.
So of course, when we are building and designing a private cloud, we have some key design principles, and these are valid still. So I mentioned a few of these already, but sovereign cloud is actually very important for us, and it's important for our customers. And when we build this, we're building everything as a service, and this actually means the entire life cycles of infrastructure. So our consumers, our users, are not only building virtual servers or Kubernetes cluster, but they're also doing firewall openings. They are publishing ingresses on the advanced load balancer and so on. So our principle here is we're calling it zero touch. My responsibility is to build robust services and which consumers can use. I'll get back to this because it's easy to say, but it's quite difficult to actually do this. And that's where we're talking about. We went from gatekeepers to guardrails. So everything we build in Kubernetes, we try to use the operator model, which means that we're trying to use the strength in Kubernetes and the Kubernetes API so that users always are able to configure their own clusters. And we're trying to do this as a community within our own company. And this is where the GitOps model is very strong. So whenever someone has a question or has a suggestion to improvements, or maybe are correcting some errors, they can do that themselves. In GitLab, in the GitOps working methodology, they can create issues, or they can actually make their own branch from the code, and they can come up with some code and can publish it back to the main branch, and we can take it into production if we like. So we try to get everyone to actually get involved, not just raise their hand and say this doesn't work, but we try to give them a tool. Okay, it doesn't work, but can you fix it yourself? Yeah, I think we'll just skip to the next one, where it's starting to get slightly more interesting, I think. I mentioned we do have VCF with Tanzu, which is quite powerful, but we are relying, as I said, we have this sovereign cloud, so we are not relying on any SaaS services like Tanzu Mission Control, Tanzu Observability, and so on. And we also find out that there's always a gap. There's always a gap between what you as a vendor can provide us with, a powerful platform, and the exact need for us as a customer. And this is because we have our own unique data center topology, we have a lot of legacy, we have our own way of working, and so on and so on. So we came up with a toolbox. And we said that this toolbox consists of several tools. We'll get into those in a minute. It's a centralized management. And we say that whenever someone builds a cluster, you get this toolbox. Even if you're not going to use it, you get it anyway, because if we do that and everything is built as code, it's easy for us to actually do updates and security patches. When we have around 100 clusters, Kubernetes clusters at the moment, if we need to actually do a patch on the toolbox, we just change the version number in the centralized configuration file, and then everything just updates automatically. So this is the gap, and we'll talk about it. Just going to mention one thing I learned at VMware Explorer last year. I was at the Tanzu session in November in Barcelona, and actually the product management team, I think, from Tanzu was talking about a tool set for Tanzu. And they had a few of the same tools that we have. This is our toolbox is now almost 2 years old. So we're thinking quite the same here.
Vegard, I spend my time on that Tanzu toolbox. Yeah. I'm curious, how much time do you think your team is spending working on platform details versus delivering what I'll say business code, actually pushing things out for the healthcare system?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did spend quite a lot of time in designing this toolbox, because we needed to find out which tools should we have regarding metrics or policy management or security scans. And then we need to come up with how do we actually do lifecycle management. But now we do, I don't know, let's say we use 20-30% of our time probably to maintain this toolbox. But the way we do it, we present a set of tools. Take, for example, we are required by law to keep track of every audit logs. So we have FluentBit, which is a operator in every cluster. And whenever someone builds a cluster, this operator will start logging every audit log into Splunk, which is our log management system. But then users on top can use the same component and create their own indexes if they like. So we're trying to find a balance between what do we actually need to push out and what should users on top be able to define for themselves. But we're using a lot of time, but we are seeing a value in this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yep. Next slide, I think we have some examples. Yeah, we do. So this is most of the tools we are using at the moment. And all of these are, almost all of these, because not the last one, but almost all are open source products. They are managed by the CNCF Foundation, and you have Harbor, which everyone knows. But this is something we provide to everyone. So, for example, DEX is a authentication provider, which means it allows us to authenticate against Active Directory or something else without us having to keep track of username and passwords. We are using Kyverno to maintain policies. So it's a policy engine which we can manage from a centralized point of view, but we can distribute it to every cluster. This allows us to have actually different sets of policies for development clusters and another set of policies in production clusters. Another tool, which is Falco, I think I have another slide on that, but Falco is actually our tool for runtime security. So we have a few security tools, and then we have the observability stack. At the moment, we are using Prometheus for metrics. We're using Grafana for the dashboard functionality. We are using FluentBit for log forwarding, and we also have the possibility to use to implement tracing, which is a tool called Vegard. We are not requiring this tool in every cluster because it's a large footprint on the cluster. So if I say this is mandatory for everyone, they actually have to pay a lot more. So I cannot force it on them, but everyone who needs it can just use it. And the brains of all this is Arbo CD, which is a CD tool, which is quite powerful. So we have one instance of Arbo CD in every cluster we are building. And then we have also a internally developed tool called ROR, which is a Norwegian acronym meaning rudder. And the reason why we choose the name is because everything in Kubernetes has some naval jargon. So we came up with the acronym first, and then we find out how should we write it out. So it's release, operate, and report. We are allowing every consumer to actually configure their own ingresses in Kubernetes through the AVI Kubernetes operator. And this is quite powerful for us. So you don't need to do anything. If users want to create their own certificates, they want to have a record in DNS, and they want to create an ingress, they can do it themselves by using code. This is part of the NSX Advanced Load Balancer package. So this is the tool set we are using at the moment. I'm not going to detail to everyone, but I think I'm going to talk a little bit about Falco and our own tool. But this is our way. This is how we can have our own team, about 4 people, managing more than 100 clusters, and still maintain a certain level of control.
Want to move to the next one?
Yeah, you can move to the next one, yes. So Falco, I was just going to mention it because this is, we have our own security operations center, our own SOC, and they wanted to have visibility into every Kubernetes cluster. And then they came up with this tool, which integrates into every cluster, and it actually lies there and monitors what users are doing. So if someone tries to spin up a shell within a container, at least in a production environment, it actually triggers an alarm with our security operations center. And then they can act and try to call. So there's a long list, longer than this. These are just some examples of what can Falco detect. So our next step for us here is, okay, let's say this is something we don't want, but we don't have any tools at the moment to actually do something automatically. That's the next step, I think. So I'm thinking about, okay, if we can have a tool that also have an IPS functionality. Okay, let's say someone tries to write to, I don't know, okay, take the first example. You try to spin up a shell. Sorry, I'm just blocking your network traffic until someone actually has investigated what is this. I am not sure if I'm allowed to do that, but I'm going to start that discussion in a moment. So this is how we, because traditional firewalls are not enough, we need to actually understand what is happening inside every cluster. And this is also the reason last year we had to change from Photon OS from VMware to Ubuntu in every cluster. And because of some upgrades and so on, we're changing back to Photon today. But actually, it's not much work because everything is defined by code. So just change the reference to the operating system, and Towns will take care of the rest. Yeah. Just go to the next one. So why ROR, which I said meaning rudder? I think there are some, just push the next here. Yeah. We are building everything as a service. We cannot use our 3-4 persons team to actually sit and take orders. And this is not a ticketing system. If users need something, they should be able to create it. They should be able to do day 2 configuration, meaning firewall rules, ingresses, and so on. They should be able to change the configuration. Okay, you may need to go from 3 nodes to 5 nodes to 8 nodes. You may need to change machine classes. Everything should be able to be done by the users themselves. And they need some feedback because I'm saying, okay, just build it. But if you build it, you pay for it. So that's my job, to make sure that everyone is building something. We need to be able to present a cost to them. So this is something we can do through our own portal, allowing users to just operate their own clusters. And if they prefer online, they can do that as well. And we are at the moment trying, no, we're not trying, we actually did it last week, to build some security reports into the same tool. So every owner of a cluster can now see how compliant is my cluster compared to the policy set which we have defined. So I think we may have a few examples here.
We got just a question in between, especially when you just said we can detect, or we can actually see how much the cost would be, and we could bring that to the owner of the cluster. Are you actually doing it, or is it just a possibility to do it?
I'm doing it, but at the moment I'm doing it in Excel. So every month I take out every big data set. I'm just doing some formatting, and I'm sending it out to everyone who owns different clusters. And the reason is we need a way to actually present the cost to those who own the clusters. And if they think that, okay, this was very expensive, okay, this is because you have so many clusters, you have so many nodes, you're using so much CPU. So if you need to lower your costs, okay, this is the map as it is right now. So feel free, just reduce the amount of CPUs or memory or something, but this is the cost. And I also want to, because traditionally, talking about test environments, for example, whenever a test environment is created, it just lives forever. Within Tanzu and Kubernetes, we are using, it takes about 30 minutes, I think, from you push commit code until the cluster is fully up and running with everything in it. So if you need a test environment, you should just build it when you need it and go fetch a cup of coffee when it's building. And then you do your testing and then just destroy it afterwards. So this is something we're trying to get the users to do. So if you have a cluster, use it 1 week. When you want, okay, I'll present the cost for this week to you. If you don't do it, I think that our environment will just grow and grow and grow. And it will be very expensive because we are a partner of VMware, so we're paying for everything we're consuming. So yeah, so we need to actually get the cost out to whoever owns it.
Vegard, how do you identify that a cluster is owned by a particular, you know, piece of the business or developer?
Yeah, I didn't mention it, but that's very important. When we started, we said that, okay, we need some way to identify who owns this cluster, what kind of data do we have, how critical is this cluster, is it production or something, and what kind of environment. So we have a set of metadata, we have a set of tags. So every VM that is built, we have a set of tags that you need to actually produce for every VM. And cost, or cost center as we call it, is one of these tags. And just an example, if you build a VM and somehow are able to actually not define what kind of environment is this, you're actually dropping every network traffic to and from that VM. So the reason is because, okay, we need to keep track of all this metadata. If not, we are losing control. So if you build a VM, environment is undefined, sorry, you have no network traffic. And as another example, if you have one VM in a test environment and trying to communicate with another VM in a production environment, so even if you allow the traffic, we are dropping it on the firewall because you're not allowed to communicate between test and production. And the same thing is for Kubernetes cluster. This is a little bit different because when we started out, we were building clusters by code. And within Tanzu, every cluster that you build by code gets a status that is developer managed. So we're not able to tag clusters at this, in the same way as we tag a virtual machine. We still have metadata, and we have it in our own system here, in a database here, and we are looking how can we just feed metadata back to Tanzu as annotations or labels. But the main rule is you need to produce metadata for everything you build. If you don't, we just cut network connectivity.
Fascinating. I got 100 questions, but I'll let you go. I know we're up against the time, and I don't want to filibuster the whole thing.
Yeah. So this is just a screenshot of this is on-premise. So we have some key principles. Everything should be API driven. We are collecting a lot of data locally in every cluster, but we are presenting it centralized. So we are just feeding data into a database and just presenting it centralized. So everything is based on microservices. It's an event-based architecture. So as a user, you can go in, you can click on everything. I'm just going through every column here because this is pretty standard, but we have a few things, I think, on the next slide. Yeah, this is also metadata. On the right-hand side, you can see some of the things you were asking about. This is actually cost center is not here, but this is how we organize metadata. So this is metadata connected to every cluster we built. So if you are a consumer and you think that, okay, this was quite expensive, okay, but you have 3 nodes, you actually have 3 control plane nodes, as you can see on the HA control plane on the right side. So if you think this is too expensive, this is the tool you need to actually lower your cost. Yeah, so just to next. And we all, a lot of questions. I think last year, maybe well over half of the questions we got was regarding publications or ingresses from Kubernetes. This is not only because of advanced load management, but this is because of our own network topology. We have a lot of domains, we have a lot of different networks, we have our internet connections, we have our healthcare network, and so on. So we actually have to provide a very, very simple graphical user interface, like the example here. So every cluster, you can go in and look at the ingresses. Okay, you get one green, two red. This is not going to work. You just need to correct it so everything is green. If you just click one, yes. Yeah. So and there are some suggestions. What can you do to actually make all ingresses correct? So we started there. This was to actually help our users. But then we saw that if you click one more, yeah, we can display every ingress. First, we did it within the cluster. This is just to help users. So we can see here, this is one cluster with 6 ingresses. 4 of them are on the internet. So the next thing we did was actually collect everything. And we did a centralized presentation of this. We took out every ingress from every cluster and we did some grouping. And so, okay, we have a few services, few clusters that have more than 10 ingresses. So this is something you can just feed over to our security department and let them actually look into it. Should there be more than 10, or is this something we should look into? But I'm not doing it because I have a small team, but we have a security division. This is something they can do. And this is when we're talking about the transition from gatekeepers to guardrails. In the old world, if you needed something on the F5 big IP, if you need a firewall configuration, you just fill out the ticket, you send it to someone else, and they will look into it whenever they had the time, and they will actually maybe correct it, maybe do it like they already said or not. But in this world, every owner of the clusters are actually doing this themselves. So we need to move to guardrails. We need to look into this quite often and see, are we on the road or are we driving off a cliff? So this is something both for consumers, but also for us as a platform owner. And this is Kubernetes. This is only Kubernetes. And the next thing we did, this was last Friday, I think. It was the 1-year anniversary of our tool, Roar. So we started to take Kyverno policies, reports from Kyverno, which is a standard Kubernetes CLI command, feeding into a database, and then we just did some grouping there. And every cluster you have, now every consumer can just log on to this tool, go into policy reports, and then you can see, you get all the namespaces, you get how many past policy sets, 341 actually in this example. It's okay, but you can see here, you have 9 failed. So users can now click into these 9 failed policies, correct them, and if there are some error, we probably will, the application will probably not run. So this is the same. We can maintain a policy set centralized, but we need to provide all the tools to end users so they can fix it themselves. Because if we have like 100 clusters, if every owner of these 100 clusters send anything to us, we have a problem with policies. We're never going to get far. So yeah, this is same thing here. Provide tools to users who need it. Yeah, I think we could skip to next. Yeah, so this the first 2 years we spent most of 2021 building the. We did the plan phase in January, early February. And we started building in late April 2021, and we spent the rest of the year building the 2 regions. And we spent last year actually building a lot of services and applications on top. So we have a little over 100 Kubernetes clusters. Not so many virtual machines, but we still have more than 5,000 virtual machines on the traditional infrastructure. So all of those are going to migrate into this private cloud. The biggest thing for us has been, as I said, the transition from ticket-based management to a self-service world. And self-service is not only giving users access to VRA or ARIA automation, I think it's called now, but it's everything else like day-to-day operations and the entire lifecycle management. And this has been the transition from gatekeepers to guardrails. This is, and this also means something for us because we are shifting the responsibility. We're pushing more risk and responsibility onto our consumers. So we need to actually protect the platform and let consumers take the risk themselves. And this is, for us who's been working in operations for quite a long time, this is a shift in mindset. We're not pushing everything out, but we need, our users are saying, we want to decide what's acceptable risk. You cannot decide it for me. So my job is to protect the platform and prevent the biggest mistakes. And then we need some other guardrails like the ingress list to just see, okay, are you doing something stupid or not? We also saw that when we started this, we had a lot of developers who said, we want self-service, we want to publish code several times a day and so on. But they're not interested in having maybe a standby duty 24/7. This could be production systems, but they want someone else to be on call if something happens. So we're trying to make the team structure need to be different, and the skill set also needs to be different. So this is not easy. It takes a lot of time to actually adjust every team to this new world, and also the skill set. Not only for operations, we needed to learn vSAN and NSX and so on, but we also needed to learn the GitOps way of working. A lot of developers were talking about Kubernetes, but they didn't understand Kubernetes. So the ambitions didn't actually meet the actual skill set they had. So this has been interesting journey, so to say. So building skills, this is something that we are talking about all the time. If you click, well, yeah, so how do we do that? We do it, I'll explain the picture. We're doing it in a lot of ways. We recently had around a little over 35 people on a Kubernetes course, learning Kubernetes from a standard Kubernetes. But learning Kubernetes doesn't mean that you know how you can use and work within our environment, with our load balancer, with our virtualization environment, our security policies, and so on. So we started looking into light boards, which is what we're seeing here in our studio. And I found the light board, okay, it costs about $2,500. So okay, I took it to some of those working in communications. Say, hey, do you have $2,500? No. So we built it ourselves, actually. So we bought materials, we built it. If you push one more, we did some, just next slide, yes, I think you just can see the image is flipped. So we have a camera, we have full light, control of the light within the room, we are filming it, and it actually works quite nice. So we ended up with a cost of about maybe $1,200, I think, instead of $2,500. So we actually, for every part of the platform services, we expect everyone to know Kubernetes, and then we have just short videos, 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, this is how we do cost calculations. This is our delivery model. This is NSX Advanced Load Balancer. This is Tanzu. This is what you need to start, and so on. So I think we have about 8 to 10 videos. And then we always refer to our documentation at the end. But this is ongoing, and we use Slack a lot, different tools to just get the skill set up. Yeah, I think we have next, maybe. So, yeah. GitOps way of working was for us new, but also very powerful. Everything we build, especially in the Tanzu part of the platform, is done by code. So we had a conference last year here in Norway where we gathered around 200 people from the healthcare sector in Norway, including a few from VMware actually. And we did a demo, live demo, of how can we update components. And we did it in the production on stage, just by changing something in the code and pushing it out. We could, at the moment, we had around 50 clusters, and we updated in about 5-6 minutes. But the community-based development, quite powerful, and you get a lot from GitLab. And what we also saw, and this is something most people know, if you have new technology and you have the old organization, there's a very good chance that you are not able to use or utilize the new technology fully, because Melvin Conway was a software developer in the US, I think, and he had a law he stated in late 60s, early 70s, I think, and he said everyone developing a system will eventually develop the system so that it matches the organizational structure where they are. Meaning, as I said, you cannot take new technology and expect to actually use it efficiently on the old organization. So what we said, okay, let's start with the delivery model. Let's start with the architecture, define that, and then adjust the organization accordingly. This is easy to say. It's extremely hard to do, and it takes a lot of time. We are not doing that, but this must be the mindset. We are using a lot of money on VMware VCF, which means it's a different way of working, it's a different tool set, it's different technologies, a little bit different at least. So we cannot send tickets between networking and storage and compute guys. So this is ongoing for us. Yeah, just yeah, look at that last slide. Taken a few years ago, and I was in VMware Explorer in Barcelona, so I needed just to provide a picture of Northern Lights. This is taking half-hour drive from where I live during the middle of the winter. So that's our private cloud. It runs on VMware VCF with Tanzu. We have a technology stack on top. We try to say that focus should be on the users, on developers. How can we build what they need without compromising too much security? And also we have said that we are in a state of constant change. We're never done. We're never done building the private cloud. There will always be some adjustments, some changes, some new features. So that's also important in the organizational perspective.
Vegard, thank you so much for that overview. I think it was a great deep dive into that topic, and it's inspirational for many of us who are, having these kind of discussions at the moment. I'm looking around if there are any other questions right now. I know, JT, you have not one question; you have 100. I give you,
absolutely.
I give you one,
thank you.
And then we are planning a follow-up with Vegard specifically on the topic.
Yeah. Specifically, and super grateful, Vegard, for you to just be as open and share all about this. Absolutely amazing, and congratulations on what you built. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Again, right? I'm going to collect the questions, Vegard, and definitely I'm going to reach out with a follow-up. And by the way, also thank you and a big applause from the whole round here for your presentation. But not only that, I know that you're also supporting us during various events. We were just talking about VMware Explore, but I know that Cheto is more or less, occupying you as a side job already, doing presentations in Norway and being on stage in Norway. So thank you so much for that.